Hello and welcome to episode 77 of Linux After Dark. I'm Joe.
I'm Chris.
I'm Gary.
And I'm Dalton.
Welcome back, chaps. It's been just over a year since we did our annual check-in on Ubuntu and Canonical. This is becoming something of a tradition now, so I thought let's do it again. We need to talk about Ubuntu. The first time it was about snaps and slow loading times. Then a year later we talked about how Flatpak wasn't allowed in the flavors. And now I want to start with the update situation and how confusing that is. Ubuntu Pro and ESM and all of that stuff. Why does my terminal keep telling me there's updates available that I can't have?
Well, Joe, it's because of capitalism. Is it too early to start this? Maybe not.
It's never too early to complain about capitalism. Right, so you then sign up for Ubuntu Pro, which is free for personal use, like up to 5 machines. So I've done that on my NAS. But it's still not exactly clear to me what updates I will be getting and what updates I won't be getting.
I think it's just been a terribly PR'd thing by Canonical, hasn't it? It just appeared in the terminal one day. I'm absolutely sure there must be a blog post about it somewhere, but I either don't care enough to go and find it, or my Google foo isn't good enough to go and find it.
Would you like the full explanation of how this delineation happens?
Go on, give it to us.
So it is a bit opaque to us, especially as outsiders to Canonical, but Ubuntu is split into multiple repositories or components. There's the main repository, universe, multiverse, and restricted. Main and universe are open source software, and restricted and multiverse are kind of their closed source counterparts. Main and restricted, well, mostly just main, gets security updates from Canonical for the entire LTS lifetime of the release. If you install a package from main, you get those updates for free, as far as we know now, always, for the 5 years.
For 5 years as a standard user, or 10 years if you sign up for their Ubuntu Pro, which is free for 5 machines.
And then the universe repository, which is where the vast majority of software in Ubuntu is located, used to be best effort support. So you'd only get packages during the LTS if Canonical decided to, or someone in the community made that update available.
VLC, for example, I remember there was once a vulnerability with subtitles and it took a community member to fix that.
Right. And there's a bunch of process around that because issues in Ubuntu generally need to be fixed in the devel release and every release ahead of this LTS before you can fix this LTS. So that can be a barrier to entry for people. More than that, what Canonical is saying now is that for every package in Universe, the security team will track security issues and fix them. I believe there's actually some prioritization going on there based on how many paying customers have actually installed the packages, but that remains to be seen if there's anything missing yet that just isn't happening in Universe, or if it only happens on request, it's not entirely clear. And security updates that the security team does in Universe are generally not released publicly, period.
As in they're only released to people with Ubuntu Pro?
Correct. Only with the ESM apps subscription component of Pro, and not with the ESM infra component, which only gives you access to another 5 years of updates for the main repository. I think they're actually getting rid of that part. I hope they're actually getting rid of that part because it's even more confusing.
Right, well, this has completely cleared it up, and we can end the episode there.
Yeah, I'm happy as well. Yeah, you've completely clarified it.
Like, what? You have done your best effort there to explain it, but it's still a horrible mess. What are they playing at?
I have terrible news because I'm not done.
Oh, no.
This is like the Mac and the CD-ROM.
For interim releases, there is no Ubuntu Pro. So if you're running an interim release, policy in Ubuntu is that you must fix issues that exist in newer versions before you can fix them in older versions. So if there's a security update that applies to something in the interim and the LTS before it, you're going to get the fix for free in Universe in the interim. But the same doesn't occur if you're currently on the LTS, like if the current LTS is also the interim release because there's nothing newer yet. And even then, if the package is similar enough in version to something that's in Debian or potentially OpenSUSE, depending on the situation, I'd say. If Canonical can just take a patch for free from another community and apply that to whatever's in the LTS that you're using, you get that for free too, because Canonical doesn't want to be seen as the people who are locking up security updates that were given for free by someone else. So this was the case recently with a security update in 2204 and 2004, and potentially 1804, but that's ESM now, so oh well, where if you are running 2204, you don't get the security update, but if you're running 2004, you do. Because Debian had a version of Tomcat similar enough to 2004's version that they didn't want to lock up the security fix.
But they didn't port it to the LTS in the middle.
2004, then 2204. So they had to do some forward porting of the patch for 2204. They locked that one up.
So you're saying it's politics and capitalism. It's even worse.
I'm assuming that that's finished, or is there more?
That's about it. At the end of the day, it's Canonical trying their best to make this seem like they're, doing the right thing here, and just somehow making things more confusing and making the world a little bit better at the same time, but also a little bit not better. But they kind of have to do that, otherwise they can't fund the security team at its current size. So what do you do?
So what is the strategy here of putting adverts in everyone's terminal with a taster? Is this like a kind of drug dealer? I'll give you the first 5 for free, hoping that you'll get people hooked on Ubuntu Pro and they'll want to pay. Is that the strategy?
Must be, surely.
Seems like it.
Well, I can't speak for being inside to see whether that's paying off and whether that's making money to fund the security team. But if I was running Ubuntu still on a desktop machine, I would be running my updates in a terminal. It's the last thing I do before I turn my machine off is run updates and then turn off the machine. So it doesn't annoy me as much because I have unattended upgrades and then I will log into a box intermittently. I've only got 2 left that run Ubuntu, and they're the things that run ZFS. But I think what you said, Gary, is right, that it's the messaging. It's a bit like when the phased updates came out, right? Which is partly a problem with upstream, with Debian. It looks like apt is broken in the way that they rolled it out. And eventually they put some explainers out and it was explained to everyone and it made sense. But I initially thought I was in a broken app situation and I had to run apt install -f to try and fix it. And then it wouldn't fix, and then these packages wouldn't install, and I didn't understand.
Well, yeah, it almost looks like a "you have held broken packages" type message, doesn't it?
Exactly.
If you just glance over it, that's what I thought it was.
And once you read up on it, in fact, wouldn't it be bad if a broken update was rolled out to loads and loads of machines all at the same time? Wouldn't that be a really bad thing to happen? I wonder if that's ever happened recently. So I get the reasons why you might want to do that, especially for core packages. You don't want the operating system to not boot. And if it's a package where, like Grub2, for example, most people are going to do a default install with Grub2. If Grub2 breaks, you can't turn on your computer. And that's going to affect a lot of users, especially desktop users who turn the machine on. As we've discussed before, Ubuntu is a great choice for people that just turn the machine on and it goes. But there has to be messaging around it. And I feel like that has been missing for the phased updates, and it's been missing for these Ubuntu Pro subscriptions as well.
I think one of the biggest problems with the Pro subscription is I don't know if anyone actually has the plan for exactly what we do. I don't know if there is a flowchart, and I certainly don't think it's public, of when a thing is bad enough that it'll just get released to everyone, because I'm sure that's something extremely critical that everyone is using, for example, would still get released because Canonical is a good world citizen at the end of the day. But we just don't have any insight to that decision-making process.
Well, I think if you paid Canonical money and you had some kind of Canonical partner manager, you'd probably get access to that information. And I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? Is that to mere mortals and the community that are using Ubuntu, it's about as clear as mud, frankly.
And I suppose some of that is I suppose that's fair kind of response. Those of us who aren't paying and are just getting benefits from the security team, it kind of makes sense that we don't really get told what's going on. And a lot of these updates are coming for packages that are more important for people who are making money off of Ubuntu anyway. So maybe not quite as bad, but it's a tough situation because whenever you talk to someone who's really into Canonical and really excited about Ubuntu, they say, well, nothing has really changed for users who are just using Ubuntu without Pro. Before, you wouldn't get updates to things that happened in Universe, and you still don't get updates if security issues happen in Universe. Nothing has changed there, but something has because someone is taking the time to do these security updates, and they just aren't giving them to you. So there is a change, but it's a little more philosophical than practical, I guess.
Well, and they're rubbing it in your face. That's the problem.
Well, it's the message in the terminal of, we did this work, but you don't get it unless you pay us, schmuck, isn't it?
Yeah, or at least sign up for the free thing.
Well, 5 machines only goes so far, right? Like, how many laptops on the stack am I going to update with 5 machines? Not very many. And I've more than 5 Ubuntu servers in production, that's for sure.
It also gives you live patch, right? Is that right? I haven't activated it on my machines, but you can live patch the kernel, right?
Yeah.
I suppose it does, yes.
Yeah. And as I say, my exposure to it is less now. When I deploy Ubuntu at work, we have a gold image. So we just deploy VMs from that. We might bootstrap containers from Ubuntu. But again, that sort of thing doesn't come up. I don't have my hands on as many Ubuntu machines as I might have done. And I'm much more involved in whatever the hell is going on in the Red Hat universe. And that's a whole other headache, which I don't really want to get into. So it doesn't grind my gears as much as I think it might have done if all my machines, including my desktops, were running Ubuntu.
Yeah, but you have moved to Debian and you are not alone. There are a lot of people I know. Okay, they are the real enthusiasts who update via the terminal and notice these things. But people are starting to move away now. I don't think it's going to make a dent in their overall numbers because it is just a few enthusiasts. But the mind share among enthusiasts is waning and the actual usage. Like you said, Chris, it's the only way you're using ZFS, you're still using Ubuntu because it's so easy.
Yeah, Debian. If you install from DKMS, you get a huge blue screen with capital letters everywhere saying, you are agreeing to something which we don't like. You must type yes and press enter. This is on you. It's very in your face.
Yeah, and on a low power machine, it takes ages every time you do a kernel update.
Well, yeah, this is it. The headers are just there for you to get going on Ubuntu. It's, as Jim in 2.5 Admins will say, that would be the obvious choice. Proxmox borrows from Ubuntu in that sense to make ZFS easier to stand up. But if someone was to come to me and ask for advice, I'm setting up a headless box, I'm into this ZFS thing, but I'm not sure how I can set it up, then that's where I would direct them to.
Yeah, FreeBSD or Ubuntu.
Yeah, exactly. If they don't have a particular need for the specifics of containerization and VMs that Proxmox offers, then a nice little headless Ubuntu box is going to be really simple to stand up in that circumstance.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by people who support us with PayPal and Patreon. Go to linuxafterdark.net/support for details of how you can support us too. Patreon supporters have the option to listen to episodes without ads like this. And it's not just this show. There's Late Night Linux for news, discoveries, audience input, and misanthropy, 2.5 Admins about system administration, Linux Matters for upbeat, family-friendly adventures, Linux Dev Time about developing with and for Linux, Hybrid Cloud Show for everything private and public cloud, and Ask the Hosts for off-topic questions from you. You can even get some episodes a bit early. We've got a lot going on, and it's only possible because of the people who support us. So if you like what we do and can afford it, it would be great if you could support us too at linuxafterdark.net/support.
I guess it's how you look at it philosophically, isn't it? Canonical are not the only ones that look at the world in this way now. How much do you value people that don't pay you financially but might contribute to Ask Ubuntu, contribute to documentation, solve bugs for other people, be almost invisible cogs in the chain? How are you labeling those people? Do you not like them? I feel like that's a bad move, and one day you'll turn around and go, hang on, the activity in this area has massively dropped. What's gone on? Well, the people that used to just sort of silently get on with that and help other people have just stopped doing that because they're so fed up. Is that a value? I think it is, and I think it's overlooked sometimes.
There is an option there because if you are an Ubuntu member, meaning you've contributed, you meet the requirements, you go through the process to become a member, you do get 50 machines instead of 5 for free. So they have an olive branch there. And additionally, I mean, if we talk about people switching to Debian to get away from this, the material difference might not be all that different, because in Debian, security updates come to you only if someone does them. And in Ubuntu, security updates come to you if you have Ubuntu Pro, and someone is going to do them because they're being paid to do so now. So it's just such a mess.
And yeah, fair's fair. Look, as we've said many times before, Canonical is like raising a flag on a pole for angry nerds on the internet to start, I'm typing angry things into Reddit, you know, that kind of thing. So I do think they get an unfair amount of criticism, but at the same time, yeah, they've pushed too many buttons with me that I would rather be in that situation, because I got to the point where I was like, what's my machine going to do that I don't want it to do today, that I have to change to make it do it the way I want to do it? And how far down the line can I go until, you know, the obvious answer from someone who's defending Canonical, and it's the correct answer, is just use something else. So I've put my money where my mouth is. Like, I'm not going to stand around stamping my feet that I don't like it. I have moved somewhere else.
Yeah, I've heard reports of people completely stripping out Snap and then it just coming back.
But this is what I worry about, because the machines I mentioned, the 2 machines, they're on 2204. I always wait for the point release because I want everyone else to find out the nasties for the first release. But yeah, I've stripped Snap out and I've set apt priority so that apt install snapd does not work. I don't know how a do release upgrade works in that circumstance.
Well, yeah, going from 2204 to 2404, Thunderbird is going to be a Snap. So I would imagine it's just going to break.
Well, if it's not a desktop install, which these aren't, then that's okay. And I did spin up a VM earlier today of 2404 because I realized I hadn't installed a new installation for ages. Because as I say, at work, we use a gold image that someone else on the team created that we work from. And the machines I have do released upgrade from 2004, I think, to 2204. And there are no snaps installed on a default server installation. If you just get the ISO, install it and follow basically the default partitioning, there's a screen that appears and says, would you like microcates or various other snaps, you know, Nextcloud, and you can select them and it will go off and do that. But if you don't select any of those, you reboot the machine and do snap list, there are no snaps installed. The daemon's running, it's ready to install snaps. But that's actually changed from 2204, where you had LexD, which was installed as a snap. And obviously, there's another little story which other people have covered about why that's not there anymore in that form, potentially.
As far as I can make out, there's a very specific reason why they've made these changes, and that's the IPO. They want to have numbers on a spreadsheet, and it's not good enough to have, we've got this many free users. They want to be able to say we've got this many Ubuntu Pro users. And even if a lot of those are free users, like me and my NAS, it's still people who have actively engaged with them. And I honestly think this is really just what it boils down to. The more numbers they have in that spreadsheet, the more valuable the IPO is going to be.
But I also think that a bit of transparency there wouldn't go amiss for the community that for 20 odd years have supported Canonical and used Ubuntu and contributed and all the rest of it. Just say, this is why we're doing it. We want to go public. Here's how we think that going public will benefit you in the long run. Just be open about it. There's no reason not to be, as far as I can tell.
Right. I suppose needing to assemble all of this information from sources in IRC and talking to people isn't the best look. It's just kind of how things fall together after a while.
Yeah, it just makes it feel very corporate in a way that I guess Canonical hasn't felt for, I don't know, maybe 15 years prior to the last 5.
I suppose not if you're looking at a distance, but I don't know if I've seen that much of a change.
I think I have seen a change. I think the first sort of 10 years was very sort of startup-y, and then they got quite serious. And really Snap was the turning point, I think. I've heard from various ex-Canonical people that they were supposedly community people, and then they effectively got told, right, you've got to go out and promote Snap and you've got to approach companies and get them to get their software in the Snap store. And a lot of those community people subsequently left. And it's only really been in the last couple of years that Canonical have like really pushed the community stuff with paying for loads of you lot to go out there to the summit and stuff, which feels like them saying, hey, look, we really do care about the community still.
It certainly feels like trying to rebuy the goodwill that they perhaps lost in the last 10 years or so.
Exactly.
Let's not forget what was one of the founding statements of Ubuntu, Linux for human beings.
Yeah.
It feels a bit hollow. And as you say, Gary, they are attempting to turn back a bit from that path, but it's not as easily recovered as it is easily lost.
Definitely. And it's not like they lost it overnight either. They didn't care about the community for a long time. And it's almost been like 1,000 cuts, really.
Yeah, I can't point to one thing that made me switch away from Ubuntu. It was just this erosion of trust, or this erosion of not feeling like I mattered as a community member or a community user over a really, really long period of time, actually.
But I don't think that it ultimately has made much difference. I think that is the bottom line here, that there are millions and millions of people quietly using Ubuntu who do not give a shit about any of what we've just said in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, and the proof of the pudding, Joe, as well, is it would still be what I recommend to most people. I know I gave the ZFS example, but probably across the board, unless they could provide me with a compelling use case or reason to use something else, it's where I'm going to go as a recommendation. And I think that in itself still says a lot. So we might criticize them, but they're not knocked off their perch yet.
Well, yeah, it's like we said a few episodes ago. The most likely thing that we would give out to people is stock Ubuntu with GNOME. And we've all got our opinions on GNOME. We've all got our opinions on Canonical. But at the end of the day, it is a really solid desktop. And if you remove the politics from it, it probably is what most people should be running.
And I think it is important to remember through all of this that we can obviously see that they're trying with 5 free machines or 50 for Ubuntu members, with improving the process for becoming an Ubuntu member throughout the community and having a community team. It's obvious that this isn't exclusively lip service from them, that the community is important to them again. And we can definitely see effort being made. But at the end of the day, I think that there is a lot of cynicism, and I think that a lot of the Ubuntu Pro stuff is a cynical take, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just one that we need to recognize.
Well, do let us know what you think. show@linuxafterdark.net. We'd better get out of here then. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, but until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Chris.
I've been Gary.
And I've been Dalton.
See you later.